Party people.
Loco asking where the beats? Where the beats?
Told you it was coming.
These are not the beats.
Yeah, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL strategy show presented by Prize Picks. I'm Dave Loughran, and today it is ownership. It is Top Stacks' first look of the week. Always an exciting show because we're trying to get a read on what things are going to look like by Sunday, and it's the first place we're doing it right here, nowhere else. And by the way, follow me at Lafayette_D on Twitter. While you're there, say hello to my wonderful co-hosts, Eric Lindquist at Eric Lindquist on the Twitters, Matt Gajeski at Matt_Gajeski. Matt, what's cracking, brother?
How we doing, Lofty?
Doing good, doing well.
Me too, man. I was lucky enough to go to the Bucks game last night. I know you guys were talking about some NBA DFS, which I do not partake in, so I got to be a little spectator. It's weird because I don't get to do that for football.
Yeah, I know. And Eric, we've got basketball back, so going to have a good amount of balls juggled up in the air over the coming months. But listen, this is the probably best time for DFS out there. Now, I'm not going to lie. I actually loved, and I don't know where you were at on this. I loved the fact that we had basketball end and football start last year and then have like exclusively football, and then basketball started right around Christmas. It was a wonderful thing. But still, having a Christmas Day or Christmas Day NBA, having Thanksgiving Day football, the next coming, 2 or 3 months, you can't beat it.
Yeah, I mean, my brain is a hodgepodge of I don't know what, trying to figure out who plays for who, what's going on with what, trying to build an NBA model while trying to react to my NFL model and putting things together. Luckily, we have all the tools here at Awesemo.com to make that a lot easier on me. I don't know where I would be without that at the moment, but I'm having a blast with it. I think today having an 11 gamer, this is truly the official start of the NBA season. 2 game slates, they're a lot of fun and such, but looking forward to this one. It is going to be madness, but NFL still rocking. We've got bye weeks. We've got a really interesting slate on our hands. So we're going to just keep on going there too.
This daycare that I have, you have an app, right? And they send you pictures like of the kid throughout the day. And they just send the picture, says looking at flowers and exploring nature. They just have her sitting in a chair in front of this big bush with nobody around her. Is that supposed to be encouraging?
You say, how old is she?
She's 7 months. She's just sitting there in the chair staring at this giant. Cool. The back of her head, you can't even see her face. What?
They have like a seatbelt in the chair on or something.
Yeah.
Just like don't go anywhere.
Yeah. You see the back of her head. It's ridiculous. The other day they sent me one of the wrong kid. So
oh, good.
She's in good hands.
You're a standout customer, Lofty.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
Getting the special treatment.
Pretty good there, but that's just pretty funny, man. All right, let's dive into this. Before we do, happy to have all of you guys with us. I know for sure that everyone that hangs out with us during NBA season, particularly on the true opening night like we have today, ride or die NFL people. We love this stuff and you love it as much as we do. So hammer that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't joined yet, maybe you're new. Well, hey, hit that join down below. You don't have to. This content will always be free 100% of the time on YouTube. We'll never do anything to change that ever. Okay. But if you want to join, get the custom emojis, the badges, priority questions, shout outs, and all of that stuff, and become part of the team. Well, you can hit that join as well. So let's make this happen. Matt, I'm looking here at the Millie Maker. And last week we had a pretty similar thing where a ton of one entry or one lineup and 2 lineup people were in the top 30. This week, 23 of the top 30 in the Millie Maker played 2 or fewer lineups. So back-to-back weeks now where the 150 maxers really were basically edged out of the top 25, top 30.
Yeah, Eric was talking before the show how that's probably a good thing for DFS. Makes people think like even with a single bullet that you could still be the one that takes down the Millie Maker. And you absolutely could be. Running 150 doesn't necessarily give you an advantage. A lot of the 150ers are considered the sharp players, but you can certainly still build plus EV lineups, even if you have a small bankroll and you want to just test out the Millie for fun. But you can build like sharp stacks, run three players on one team, run it back with a player on the other team. nothing stopping you from just being a profitable player, even playing the millie. I just think it's going to take you a lot longer to realize whatever your potential edge if you're only playing one.
You know, Eric, you did the strategy show with Adam Scher on Monday.
Sure did.
Truthfully, an unforgettable one. But so I know you are. I know you already looked. You're a good sport, though, man. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
How about Greg Ehrenberg wearing a Homer Simpson shirt on the show yesterday?
That was great.
Dude.
He actually DM'd me. He goes, I figured you might appreciate this, and I'd lost it. But so you did it already. I know you've looked at some of this stuff, but check out what the winning millie maker lineup is. And we're going to get into ownership here. We're going to talk chalk. We're going to talk about our favorite pivots. Favorite low-owned players, and then get in the top stacks. Our top stack tool has been updated. So is ownership over at awesemo.com if you're already a premium sub. But you've got Baker Mayfield, 1.7%. Did not have, by any standard, a good game. Joe Mixon at 15%, Jonathan Taylor. That was an awesome combo. And I promise you, we're going to be talking about a lot of 6K running backs again this week. Adam Thielen at 5%, CeeDee Lamb at 5%, Donovan Peoples-Jones at 0.9%, Noah Fant at 2%, Travis Kelce at 22%, and Colts at 15%. A lot of low-owned receivers in there, low-owned tight end, and a low-owned quarterback that did virtually nothing, yet he took down the millie. Pretty amazing.
Was that the millie here from? Yeah, it was the millie from. That's crazy. I'm just pulling up. I pulled up last week's on accident here. For me, it really comes down to even looking at some of these top-end lineups. It was amazing how there's always one player that's kind of threaded throughout, and it's interesting. The 150 player who did really well was Rickety, and he had 45%
Ricky D.
Cousins. Ricky D, thank you. I
got that wrong last year, and I got laughed at.
Well, there you go. Ricky D, looking at that, and Adam Thielen, over 50% Adam Thielen he had in his 150 allotment in the slant, in the millie. It is incredible how much Adam Thielen was popping up in some of these top-end lineups, and it makes sense, a guy under 6K there. These mid-level running backs, you could kind of mix and match a couple of them that smashed. You had Darrell Henderson, you had Joe Mixon, you had so many of these dudes that kind of were right in that 30-point ballpark, and you're going to need to do that again here this week. But, hitting on that one or two guys that kind of make your lineup work everywhere else and make it have a good synergy, so to speak, and have the correlations correct. I mean, it's incredible how one guy like that can make all the difference under 6K wide receiver who just smashes the slate.
Matt, check out the I like to look at a single entry contest too, like the large field single entry ones. Check out the $12 single entry fair catch, $300,000 prize pool, 30K up top. Matt,
my lineup study's not working. You're gonna have to tell me what it is.
I'm gonna read it right now. I'm reading it to you because you might look at this at first and say, "No, I don't like that," but I actually love this lineup. So it was Matthew Stafford at 11%, then Jonathan Taylor, Darrell Henderson. So you've got Stafford and Henderson, right? I believe Henderson had a receiving touchdown as well, right? I think he did. Maybe not. I think he did, though. Adam Thielen, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, Jared Cook, Mark Ingram, and Raiders. So he had Mark Ingram in there, Jared Cook, Thielen, CeeDee Lamb, but he had the Stafford, Henderson, Cooper Kupp stack, which worked because they put up so many points, and that took it down 30K up top.
I think you can do stuff like that sometimes when you have like really large implied team totals, and then maybe the rest of the slate doesn't. And last week wasn't a week where we had just like these like 4 or 5 54-point totals. There were only a few on the day. So when you have like a shorter slate already because of bye weeks, then you have fewer teams with these really high implied team totals. I think you can take on some negative correlation as long as that's the team that ends up outperforming expectations. And I mean, that LA team last week in a cupcake matchup, it was something that you could have just looked at implied team totals and inferred. I don't think a lot of people are still building like that, especially with some of the tools like Fantasy Cruncher, whatever it may be. A lot of people are still trying to force in 3+1 stacks with like 2 pass catchers and then a run back, and not necessarily forcing in the running back into those stacks. So on certain slates where you maybe have shorter slate overall, only a couple high implied team totals, I think that can work.
All right, Eric, what do you say we dive into a little bit of week 7 ownership right now? That's what everybody's waiting for.
That's right, my dude.
All right, man. So running backs, I absolutely love the mid-K range again this week. And I'm telling you right now, like last week, I was admittedly very underweight on Kareem Hunt. Did it help that he got injured? Absolutely. Did it also have to do with the fact that, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but did it have to do with the fact too that there were a lot of really good spots for mid-range running backs that were getting a third or less of the ownership? Yeah, I absolutely think so. But this week, man, I don't think I'm fading, or sorry, I don't think I want to come in underweight at all on Darrell Henderson. Let's start there. I absolutely love him. He's only projected for 15% right now. I'm honestly shocked by that because this matchup is so against the Lions this year. Running backs have been 13th, right? So lead running backs, and that was Elijah Mitchell in week 1, 6th, 4th, 2nd, and 3rd against the Lions this year. They've been toasted by running backs. I don't see how Henderson doesn't eat them alive.
And the one game that didn't go over 100 yards on the ground was against Green Bay. Was against the Green Bay Packers, and the running back caught 3 touchdown passes. So I don't really know what to tell you. Running backs are in a really good spot going up against the Detroit team. Everybody who plays offense with a pulse is in a good spot against the Detroit defense. That shouldn't be very surprising. And right off the bat, top stacks tool, just so that none of us can use it later in the day when we refer to it. You know, you're looking at the Rams being at the very top of that with leverage. But if you want to encapsulate the entire game with one player, or, I mean, we've seen some receiving volume a little bit for Henderson here and there, combining him with some Matt Stafford as well. Everything about the Rams this week just sets up for an absolute smash. They're going to be the survivor du jour, as they should be, as 14, 15, 16-point favorites, depending on the book you're looking at. There's no way around it. Darrell Henderson, when you get a home running back that is this large of a favorite, DFS players are going to jam him in, and I don't see any problem with it.
For sure. I mean, Matt, look, this is the crazy thing. The only lead back that hasn't gone, had a solid game against them was in Baltimore, but they don't have a lead. They didn't have a lead back that week. And when you look at the overall production, this is the crazy thing. They've allowed 6 rushing touchdowns to running backs and 6 receiving touchdowns to running backs this season already. 12 touchdowns allowed to running backs. how does Darrell Henderson have a bad game? I'm not saying he can't, but if he were to, how does it happen?
I think it's probably a little far-fetched that he does. I think maybe you get just long touchdowns from Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and they just don't have as many red zone trips. But of course, like with as many drives and points as they're projected to score, it's pretty likely that they get in the red zone at some point. Like maybe you have Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee score the first couple touchdowns, and Sony Michel comes in a little later in the game. But there's just not that many paths to failure for Darrell Henderson, which is why I like him a lot too. Very surprised to see his ownership as low as it is right now. I do think it climbs throughout the week, but this guy has literally everything you could possibly want. His snap share is really high. It's climbed back up since the injury. So last week, even in the blowout, he was still at 82%. Saw 21 attempts. Sony Michel, he did carry 9 times himself, but I mean, that game was out of hand pretty quickly. And then in the pass game, they didn't need to throw the ball a lot, but he still had 3 targets. And like you mentioned, they will target him a little bit in the red zone. And I like offenses that do that a little bit. Sometimes they come on like jet sweeps or quarterback, like little shuffle passes instead of direct handoff. So if it's dropped or whatever, it's an incompletion. And the Rams use that. So Henderson's a really good play, especially at his projection and his projected ownership right now.
I really like him. I really like a lot of running backs, though. I'm going to throw a few off to you, Matt, that you can hit on. Chuba Hubbard's getting around 15% against the Giants. He's been handling a massive workload. 88% of running back carries since McCaffrey went down. He's out-targeted Royce Freeman 19-3 on the season. You've got Josh Jacobs against Philly. I think this could be the first game that Josh Jacobs has 20-plus carries, even though he hasn't been efficient. And Leonard Fournette is actually getting a little bit more ownership than I expected. But yeah, there's a lot up there. I even like Devontae Booker a decent amount against Carolina. They've allowed 534 rushing yards over their last 3 games. That's more than 6 teams have allowed on the entire season, Matt.
Yeah, that's a fantastic matchup overall. And I don't think he'll be somebody that's played as much, but trying to unpack some of the names you mentioned. Hubbard is basically playing like Christian McCaffrey light role, kind of like what we saw last year with Mike Davis. Yeah. But Hubbard, I would just caution looking too much into like the box score and the snaps last week, because Carolina did have to play from behind in that game for a lot of it. But Hubbard, while he only played on 65% of the snaps, he saw 94% of the opportunities, the carries, which is what I think we should be focusing on here. And then you look to the receiving game, like the snap share indicates it. A lot of times they weren't even using a running back on the field, but he still had 3 targets. Royce Freeman had 0. You mentioned the pass game usage for Hubbard. it's basically Christian McCaffrey light, and we still haven't seen that blow up week. It's why his price is still affordable and his ownership is in check. I think that's certainly something we can target based on where those numbers are coming in right now. With Josh Jacobs, I'm still a little bit weary of him. He has been in more of a timeshare with Kenyon Drake than some of the other names we mentioned, like Darrell Henderson and Chuba Hubbard. But there is certainly upside with the matchup here. They're favored against Philly. The total is high. And like you mentioned, it could be a game where he sees 20 plus carries because of those factors. He saw 16 last week, and it wasn't even an ideal script. Kenyon Drake is still involved there, which if you're splitting hairs would lead me more towards Henderson and some of the backs that have a more secure workload. But I think Jacobs could be a fine pivot depending on where his ownership closes.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with you. And Eric, I'm not saying that I'm in love with Jacobs. He has not rushed efficiently this season, but he has found the end zone. He's the clear goal line back there. And what's interesting to me is when you look in chat, Jacob Kimball says Philly's defense going to stuff Jacobs this week. They might, but consider that Philly's allowing more rushing attempts per game than any other team because their time of possession is so putrid. I mean, they're 30th in time of possession this year. They're running the 5th fewest plays per game, allowing the 7th most plays per game to the opponent. When you think of it that way, that they just can't keep the offense on the field, you just see them get grinded down throughout a game. And if you told me that Henry was going to get 20 carries, I think I'd probably take my chances on that, given that he is the red zone back. Where do you stand with the rest of these chalky running backs this week?
Yeah, so going up and down the rest of the board here, I think I do like Leonard Fournette quite a bit. Joe Mixon is just jumping off for me as well against Baltimore. And Baltimore repeatedly just not the same defense that we've seen in previous iterations until apparently they play the Chargers. That came out of nowhere. Especially just on a little bit of a shortened week for him. That was kind of an unbelievable performance, but I'm going right back to Joe Mixon again. I have no problem going to him. Where it starts to get fascinating for me is Darrell Williams is right now coming in with 13.9%. And considering this is an ownership show against Tennessee, that feels pretty high to me. I mean, I understand it's very flat up here on the top end, but for him to be the 5th highest owned running back here in this spot, I know that Jerick McKinnon was not nearly on the field as much as people were anticipating, maybe to get more of a passing game role. Darrell Williams looked actually pretty competent in the pass game role and pretty confident there in Buffalo in limited work, 4 targets last week. And obviously he's the one who popped with 23.9, but even that isn't going to get it done. I think on this kind of a slate at 5,800, I think I would rather get to other guys in the range. So just in terms of mid-range plays that are getting a lot of ownership that I'm not as high on, I think I'm much more in line with getting to the Patrick Mahomes stack side of it than I am Darrell Williams. Not that should surprise anybody.
All right. What about Derrick Henry, Matt? I mean, 9,200. This guy is an absolute freak. And I say that there aren't enough superlatives to describe how good Derrick Henry is day in and day out. He's like, I could honestly go on about it forever. The breakaway speed, the ability to wear down defenses in the second half, shed every tackle, steamroll people, another 3 touchdown game. He's on pace for over 2,000 yards in 16 games, not 17. Would be the first player to ever rush for 2,000 yards in 2 seasons, let alone in back-to-back seasons. I mean, is it worth us saying, you know what, maybe Eric's laughing over that. It's crazy though, man. The stats are nuts. Like, do we say, hey, you know what? He's expensive, but this guy is stupid good against a terrible Chiefs defense, and I'll take my chances. And as you like to say, Matt, make concessions elsewhere.
Yeah, that I was going to bring that up because we do.
That's your word, man. I adopted
him.
it as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's like we've been doing the show for 2 years now.
I know.
With Derrick Henry, you're going to have to decide between him and a couple other expensive players. At receiver, you do have guys like Kupp, and Adams is a little bit cheaper, very, very small price downgrade for him. But there are some, and Tyreek Hill, of course, Travis Kelce. These are all names on the slate. And right now, based on like everything we've said, it does kind of set up where we have some running back value. And I'm not necessarily sure we have like a punt wide receiver we're really comfortable with right now. So it's kind of just the fact that if you plug Derrick Henry into your lineup, this is a first glance, of course, he's going to take a valuable running back spot where you could potentially play a value guy you feel really good about. And when you do that, you kind of have to punt off a wide receiver spot, maybe a tight end spot. I'm not exactly sure, haven't built yet. You're going to have to punt something. And I'm not sure you feel as good about that build, but we'll see as the week goes on. For tournaments, of course, Derrick Henry at 15%, That's a little lower than I expected. I'm certainly going to play him if it stays in that range.
What about you, Eric?
Derrick Henry's outrageous. I will never get him right. And that's just the way that it works. Actually, no, I got him right 2 weeks ago on a main slate. And then decided to fade him on a 1-game showdown slate. That went well. I did. Because I'm a sicko. And Awesemo did the same thing. So I felt smart. I felt like a nerd. And then
like fade?
Like not full fade, no. But I mean, I was light on. I was extremely underweight, and 150 lineups. I didn't have him in the captain spot.
And then he pulled a Derrick. Is there any more anomalous player from a DFS standpoint than Henry when it comes to people just, you're a fish play if you hit on, and I'm not talking about you, but like you always hear you're a fish if you hit on a big Derrick Henry game, but then Derrick Henry every week just keeps having big games.
Until he doesn't, And Week 1 against Arizona.
That's anybody.
Right. Totally. And against the Jets too, 28.7 for his salary there when he was just next to 9K. I think he was 8,800 that week. Wasn't exactly the most ideal situation. You had a number of running backs outperform him, and that's fantastic for cash games. I think he's just somebody that you make work every single week for cash games. And I don't think you have to think twice about it, but playing tournaments, I mean, this mid-range is, again, it's just outrageous, and finding ways to get a little bit away from super chalk. And just like last week, right now, Derrick Henry coming in 15.1%. It's obviously a more difficult matchup against Kansas City here, but they're at home. They're going to have the opportunity to try to slow it down here and just give Derrick Henry the ball a ton. I think you got to find ways to get different there, because he's going to steam up to 25, 30% here by the end of the week. I find it impossible that it happens every single week with him.
I know. Can I just say, first of all, he is averaging 3 targets per game. For Derrick Henry, that's good. But like, Matt, where do we get to a point where we all acknowledge that targets are worth more than carries, but 30 carries a day is pretty good too?
Right. I think the build's going to come down to, in cash games like low risk contest, do you play Derrick Henry or do you play 3 cheap punts? Because there's not really a direct pivot for him in tournaments. Like if you're still trying to build that stars and scrubs with the running back position, you either fade Henry entirely and just play mid-price guys. Otherwise, like your nearest pivot's probably Aaron Jones, and he's nearly 2K cheaper. So there's not, like, Kamara's not on the main slate. So there isn't a direct 1-for-1 pivot for Henry. So in cash games, to Eric's point, he is very hard to avoid. You don't have a lot of, unless again, you just punt off the running back position and play like 3 of the Darrell Hendersons, Chuba Hubbards, Fournette, whoever it may be. I think outside of that construction, you're just playing him in cash games. And for tournaments at 15% ownership, like I don't think you really need to argue that anymore. His ceiling is enormous.
Yeah. And full disclosure, I haven't built any lineups yet, Eric. I was just speaking to the point that I think sometimes we get tied up in looking at Derrick Henry as just like all he does is run. But when you're going to lead the league in carries by maybe, I'm not joking, by maybe 130 carries at the end of the year, and you're averaging 3 targets per game, like I do think that has to at least be considered, because the workload we're seeing, and I say this seriously, the workload we're seeing is actually unprecedented on the ground based on what he's pacing right now.
Because if you give it to anybody else, they die. Like, you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to be on the field in pain and suffering.
He just kills other people.
He literally, I mean, it's beast mode on crack, and it's difficult. But 9,200 for Derrick Henry. For me, this slate is going to come down to how Derrick Henry does in comparison to the upper end of wide receiver as well. You have Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Cooper Kupp all underneath 9K. And if they outpace Derrick Henry in any kind of way in a PPR format, all seem to be in fantastic spots. Devontae Adams against this decrepit Washington secondary, Tyreek Hill against Tennessee, which there are no words for the kind of upside that exists there. And Cooper Kupp against Detroit. Come on. I mean, these are 3 phenomenal plays underneath 9K. So I'm looking at Derrick Henry in comparison to the rest of the field. And as opposed to 2 weeks ago, where I just didn't see anybody else once Christian McCaffrey got ruled out, and you just jammed a ton of Derrick Henry in your lineups because you had Devontae Adams, him, and then nobody else really on that top end. Chiefs weren't on that main slate. I think you have other options and other pivots and other ways to spend your salary. And I feel a little bit more comfortable, and maybe this is just a fool's idea of it, I feel more comfortable just taking shots with the upside, getting away from it, considering I know Derrick Henry's ownership is only going to skyrocket between now and Sunday.
Fair enough. It is crazy though. Matt made a point that like he's on an island in terms of salary, right? There's not really anybody else even close with McCaffrey out. No Kamara on this slate. If you had to guess, how many fantasy DraftKings points per game is he averaging, Eric?
Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
I'm just going to come up with a number 30.
Yeah. 31 per game.
Okay.
So, not bad.
Is that good?
It's not bad. Yeah. I mean, it's preferred. Sure. I think we hit on a lot of these, the chalkier option. I think we hit on all of them actually. So when it comes to pivots, Matt, there's not a lot here that I like right now. We have 10 running backs projected for double-digit ownership. So it really is flat. I don't know how crazy you have to get in being different. I might take some shots on Miles Sanders for the first time in weeks. It feels awful, but I might. Is there anybody you like under that 10% range?
It's just so hard to talk about pivots at this point in the week with so many injury questions like Damian Harris, Antonio Gibson. Do we get David Montgomery? Like, I mean, I don't think we get a lot of these guys, but like so many players are hurt down here. It's
because McKissick could be great if Gibson's out.
Yeah, like Ramondre Stevenson. And I mean, I think New England's still a timeshare, but we're just dealing with so many injuries on a short week too, that you probably see some condensed ownership unless we get like a value play emerge or something like that. But so, I mean, like under 10%, it's really hard, I think, to talk about any of these guys. But I mean, and sorry for David Montgomery, I meant Damian Williams, not David Montgomery. Damian Williams was on the COVID list. We'll see if we get him back. I like Chase Edmonds a lot, but he's still even 10%.
Yeah, he has 10 carries over the last 2 games. I'm wondering if that shoulder injury is affecting him. I really do. I at this rate, I don't know. He's played like 2 fewer snaps over the last 2 weeks than James Conner. I know they've been winning, but they're also 16-point favorites again this week.
Yeah. I mean, you could look to Conner then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Look, I'm not comfortable with that backfield, but in tournaments, it makes sense. If Conner gets 2 goal line carries, he's 5 of 7 on goal line conversions this year. So if he gets down there, he's probably going to score.
Yeah. And I think that just speaks to like the ownership this week. Most people, if everything holds true and there's like some players that we don't have surprise injury news on, a lot of these like under 10% ownership backs are going to be really uncomfortable plays in your lineup. So I think like taking a shot on James Conner, a guy that is in basically a 50-50 timeshare with Chase Edmonds, but has a very clear role on the goal line in an offense that's going to score a ton of points. I mean, their implied team totals north of 32. Yeah. Those are the kind of stabs that I'll take this week.
For sure. Eagles offensive coordinator said that, and Chat mentioned this as well, Eric, that they need to get Miles Sanders more involved. We all know coach speak is largely bullshit, but this game could stay close. I will take, I can be pretty light on Sanders and still be overweight to the field. So I'll get a little bit of him. I don't really have a ton of pivots, and I think Matt's right about it's very early in the week with injuries. Is there anyone right now, though, that you kind of like?
I don't want to talk about him, but I'm going to embarrass myself by talking about Mike Davis because he's 5,200. And
I don't think it's crazy.
Okay, 5,200 Mike Davis. Cordarrelle Patterson. We'll see what his ownership is. The guy's been out of control. Like, I don't even really know how to assess it, but 13 carries now back-to-back weeks for Mike Davis, 5,200 going up against this Miami team. And man, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel exciting, but Miami's just been hemorrhaging a lot of work on the ground until that Jacksonville game. They had also failed to give up under 120 yards on the ground this entire season. Between the two of them, I mean, Patterson was starting to get more involved just from a carry perspective last time out, 14 carries against the Jets, but they were in control of that game until they just weren't in garbage time. They put the hammer down early, and I think Cordarrelle Patterson just started getting more work than Mike Davis might have gotten there in that spot. I like to at least think so. That's the narrative I'm spinning in my brain, but 5,200, that price just continues to creep down. He hasn't popped off yet here for anybody. He's just been a little bit tempered, but only one rushing touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown here on the season. Against this Miami team giving up over 29 points per game, I'm willing to take shots more so on Mike Davis than I am on Patterson.
Okay. I don't blame you at all for that, man. Davis is still getting opportunities. Matt, you have anything else? Either of you guys got anything else at running back right now? And Matt, the spots to look out for are what, right? We're waiting on Damian Harris. We're waiting on the Bears backfield. I think the Gibson news, I don't think he plays. The guy had an MRI. I mean, I really do not think he plays. He's already dealing with one injury, coming into another one. JD McKissic got a ton of work in a come from behind mode. So anything else that we're watching out for?
Those are the big ones. I think that Washington's going to remain a timeshare either way, with McKissic playing his pass game role and Jaret Patterson being more of the early down back, which is kind of interesting to say because he's a really tiny back. He's like 195 pounds, came out of Buffalo. And then you should have some clarity on the Bears situation because it's a COVID situation. So either Damian Williams plays or he doesn't. If he does play, I think that's more of a timeshare. Khalil Herbert played really well, but if you have him miss the game, Khalil Herbert would be, again, a very good play. But I mean, that's a long time for Damian Williams to test negative. So I think they should get him back. And outside of that, just the Patriots situation, they're going to basically run a timeshare, I think, if Damian Harris is out, but we'll have to wait on most of these.
Matt, just to clarify why I like McKissic a lot if Gibson's out, because I don't disagree with that analysis. They're almost double-digit dogs to Green Bay this week. Last I looked, it was 9.5, 10 in some spots. I don't see how we don't see like Alex Smith to JD McKissic type volume this week if they're playing from behind like they were last week. 10 targets. I think the PPR upside for McKissic could be significant. And without Antonio Gibson, if he even sees 8 or 10 carries, you might be looking at a 20-look game for McKissic. Yeah,
for sure. And for what it's worth, Jaret Patterson cannot catch. He had 0 catches in his final season at Buffalo. Wow. He had 20 career receptions in his entire college career. He is by no means a pass catcher. So that is JD McKissic's role.
Eric, wrap us up at running backs. And yes, I know we spend the most time at running backs every week because, well, right now it's the most important.
So again, because we have so much injury stuff kind of waiting on the pipeline, one guy that I'm looking at, and again, this is just me in my tournament brain trying to find guys that are just absolute flyers in this spot. And Latavius Murray right now is questionable. You're looking at a Baltimore team that runs at the highest pace or the highest frequency of anybody else in the league. So you have Le'Veon Bell, you have Devonta Freeman there. Devonta Freeman seems like he's the clear passing back there in that spot. Tyson Williams was inactive. I would assume he would just be activated and probably see some kind of work, but underneath 4,500, I think that there's really nothing on a week-to-week basis. He would at least give you a completely different kind of roster construction. So Devonta Freeman, somebody at 1%, 2%, you want to kind of join me with, enjoy.
And yes, Gerald, Alex Smith. I'm talking about last year when Alex Smith was targeting McKissic, 50 times a game, something absurd like that. I know you guys remember that string of weeks where McKissic was just getting like a 40% target share in that offense. That I think you could see, obviously not that, but they're already beat up at wide receiver. So, and tight end.
Alex Smith at QB will do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. But we saw Heineke go to McKissic 10 times last game too. So
crazy. Could
you start seeing something similar? Yeah. Maybe not to the same extent, but I think you could see a lot of that. Hey, Eric, what do you know about Prize Picks, bro?
Oh my God. Prize Picks. What is Prize Picks?
Or
drink your coffee. Oh,
you can start.
Prize Picks. It's basically a spot where you get to play props, correct? If I had to guess.
Yes, that's correct.
God, you screwed that up so bad. That was all on you.
I thought you might actually, when I say, what do you know about Prize Picks? Given that I know you host shows and you actually know stuff about Prize Picks, that you would say more than, Prize Picks.
It's a bit, Buffy.
I thought I had a second. If it was a short bit, I'd have said, hey, have you heard about Prize Picks? Would not have taken a sip of coffee there. But you're right. I share partial responsibility. Forget about it. You know what Prize Picks is, right? And for those of you that don't know what Prize Picks is, you should check it out. One thing I hadn't been promoting about Prize Picks that I think I was making a mistake on because it's pivotal in deciding whether or not you're going to throw a parlay in at some of these other books or go over to Prize Picks where you have daily prop-based contests is you can play 2, 3, 4, or 5 prop lineups, right? And unlike other traditional books, you don't have to hit all 5 of them to cash. I think that's what makes this so special is you could hit 3 or 4 of them and still have a nice profit. There's no juice on the over, on the under, anything like that, just props, right? The yes or no, the over, the under, all of that stuff over at Prize Picks, a ton of different sports as well. Seriously, go to prizepicks.com or download it in the App Store or check it out in the Google Play Store. Look at some of the prop offerings they have for sports. If you have some niche knowledge of sports or you like staying up 48 straight hours to watch a cricket match, Prize Picks is for you. Or if you just like basketball or baseball or NFL or PGA or college football, all of that stuff, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, like they have everything over there, and you can combine them if you want. So if you're doing a 5-prop lineup, you can combine NBA with NFL with NHL. It doesn't all have to be one. It's really awesome. It looks good over there. You feel good over there, and you'll feel even better when you use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO. Get $100 up to $100 instant deposit match bonus when you sign up at Prize Picks using the promo code Awesemo. Eric, do you have anything that you just feel great about this week?
I have one of my favorite props of the entire season this week for you on Prize Picks. Matthew Stafford, 285.5 passing yards. Run, do not walk to Prize Picks. Go over there, hit the over on that. Right now, Awesemo projected, as I started my process yesterday, 331.3 passing yards here in this spot going up against the Detroit Lions. We expect them to be able to move the ball with Darrell Henderson, who we talked about. We're about to talk about Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, Van Jefferson getting in the mix, Tyler Higbee. This passing game is as elite as it gets. They are going to put their foot on the throats of these Detroit Lions. They're going to just go winless here, apparently, this season. But Matthew Stafford, 285.5 passing yards. It is very rare. You get a 50-yard disparity between our projections for a player and the prop. I mean, this is just too good to be true.
Gerald says, Jordan, and I agree with you, Matt. Jordan, I need you in that smooth sounding voice on here. Laffy sounds like nails against the chalkboard compared to you. Matt, we're just getting complimented left and right today in chat, bro.
Yeah, people are really dissing us in chat, thinking I don't read it. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, that was funny. You said I do read it. R.I.P.
Wait, if you don't have a smooth voice, what do I have? Because mine is as nasty as it gets, dude.
Listen, man. I came into this business by happenstance. We all did, right? I wasn't groomed for this. We just fell into it. Matt, I've been screaming from the rooftops that the biggest edge on Prize Picks, the biggest edge, is betting the touchdown props. Because like Thursday night, get that, Monday night, Derrick Henry was 0.5 touchdowns over or under, no juice. At every other book, he was at least minus 215 to score. And they're going to eventually see these shows because they sponsor us, and they're going to check in on us and see how the reads are going. They're going to be like, we got to get rid of that shit. But for now, I will continue to hammer the touchdown props when you're getting an insane value on what would be a heavily juiced over on a lot of these lines.
Yeah, I mean, just think about touchdowns. They're harder to project, especially for like bookmakers, because you can't projecting like 0.5 touchdowns is the same thing as projecting 0.8 touchdowns. So if we're projecting 0.9 at Awesemo or something, like maybe, yes, they should have the line at 1, but there's just a bigger discrepancy between our projection and what they're listing at 0.5 because they have no incentive to list it at anything but the half. So you're just going to lead to more inefficient lines that way.
For sure.
It's legitimately off the board at Prize Picks. So
well, I don't believe they'll add them until like tomorrow or so, but I wouldn't blame them for for Derrick Henry. It should legitimately be like 1.5 touchdowns.
Or it should just be 1. It should be 1 and you don't get paid out on that number.
Sure. Yeah. But it's so easy to push that number. You don't want to do that, you know?
Right. You wouldn't, but I mean, that would be the thing that would be logical for a line for it. Yeah.
Or you just juice the hell out of 0.5.
No juice on Prize Picks.
But that's what I'm saying, Matt. There's no juice on Prize Picks.
Yeah, that's where you run into an issue. Like they have to do 1 or you can't do it.
Right. But that's why I'm saying if you're playing over there, you have to be hitting these touchdown props. Like you have, not all of them, but you're getting minus 150, minus 215. You have to hit them, whether they hit or not, whether you win or not. Those are literally the best value you're going to get on the site every single week, hands down. All right. Prize Picks. Get the deposit bonus using the promo code Awesemo. Sorry, long read, but it's kind of fun to talk about that stuff. And I would hope that you guys appreciate if we're giving you, like actual edges on these spots that you're not going to find on DraftKings and FanDuel or any of these sites, that you would want to take advantage of that, All right. Eric, talk to me about wide receivers at the top. Where is the chalk, or where are you going with the chalk? Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams, obviously getting a lot of love this week and for good reason.
Yeah, as they should. And Cooper Kupp is 8,400, and that's a misprice. It's an obvious, glaring misprice. If you don't play him in cash games, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we're looking at this Rams passing attack as being one of the highest leverage spots of the entire season. It's similar to what we saw with Kansas City 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago in the main slate, where you were getting 15-20% leverage. Same thing with Tampa Bay. It was 2 weeks ago, in that evisceration that they had against the Dolphins. So much leverage to be had going to this team. And, the combination of Stafford and Kupp should be popular. It will be popular, but it won't be popular enough considering 29.3% top stack potential. A lot of that just is encompassing to Cooper Kupp, who, has been targeted double digits every single time out. Every time he adds touchdowns to the board, he's going to break slates like he did last week, 37 fantasy points there. He's just an absolute monster. Why he isn't priced above the likes of Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, or at least alongside them, is beyond me, because his volume is elite. His ability to get deep now apparently is elite. I don't even know what else to say. 8,400 is a glaring misprice. And a lot of what you're going to be doing is playing him in cash games and figuring out if you need to go elsewhere in tournaments on Sunday.
Matt, one thing that was shocking to me is you've got guys like Cooper Kupp and Devontae. I shouldn't say shocking, but it just goes to show you how good they are. These guys are averaging like 3.5, 3.3 yards per route run, and they're running a ton of routes. Like, they're getting targeted. It's just the efficiency and the overall production, straight and utter dominance from the guys up top.
Yeah, it's 100% true. I just want to echo what Eric said about like Cooper Kupp and the Rams. They're passing at such a high rate too, that it's just really hard for players like that to fail. And even with Cooper Kupp specifically being cheaper than some of those other studs, with the Rams being so pass heavy, especially in like neutral scripts, there's just such a high floor with him. And that kind of goes back to the Derrick Henry discussion. You can't play all these studs. So who are you prioritizing in your lineups among the studs? I've been generally prioritizing, if you can't get Henry and one of these studs, that is, prioritizing the receivers with their high ceiling and high floor combos at a cheaper price than Henry, if that makes sense.
It does. I get it. What do you think about the mid-range, Matt? Well, I'm sorry, not the mid-range. Some of the other guys that are priced in the mid-range, but also getting a lot of ownership. I'll throw one at you and then let you run with whoever you like. I don't see any way Julio Jones plays this week, another hamstring injury. And I do think AJ Brown will be relatively popular. Similar to Darrell Henderson, I'm willing to get different elsewhere. I will likely have a good amount, particularly against this Kansas City defense, of AJ Brown this week in a game that if it saw 73, 75 total points, I wouldn't bat an eye.
For sure. And it's right now it's sitting at 57.5. And
it's higher than it opened at. It's going up from 55.5.
Correct me if I'm wrong. That is the highest total we've seen this year.
It's gotta be, right?
Yeah. That's the highest total I can remember seeing since that Rams, what was that game? That Rams shootout here in LA. That was
Chiefs, wasn't it? The one that went to overtime?
Yeah, Rams Chiefs. That was just madness. And you had like 3 defensive touchdowns or something that just inflated, and it hit the over by a mile.
And it had a 60-point total.
60-point total.
Did it really?
Yeah, it was crazy.
And this is crazy too. The 16, what they play? 6. So 22 games, 19 or 18 of 22 games that the Titans have played since the start of last season have gone over 50 total points. So like 50s, I get the 50s, not a ton, but when you're looking at it, just saying like, is there going to be some production here, even if it doesn't go sky high? The history dictates that, yeah, we'll probably see a good amount of points in this game, Matt.
Right. And to your point on targeting a lot of AJ Brown, that's a spot that I like a lot too, not only because of the immense total, but they're projected to be playing from behind. You have a Titans defense, which hasn't scared you at all. They just lost their first round pick, Caleb Farley. So you know the Chiefs are going to be scoring, and they do like to run Derrick Henry. They will run him when they're down, but to a certain point, you can only do that so much, and they're going to have to use AJ Brown. Target should be funneled to him. He's had a fine target share all season long. He's been banged up in game. So if anything, I think it's a little bit depressed, but you saw him have 9 targets in their last game. You're still kind of waiting for that eruption spot. He only had 91 yards, which is a very, very good game for AJ Brown, but we all know his ceiling, and Kansas City has trouble defending both the pass and the run themselves. So if Tennessee's down in games and try to come back, good matchup for AJ Brown, targets funneled to him, cheap price. Right now, the ownership is still within reason. I think he's certainly a player you can get to in this range. I think by the end of the week, he might even be cash viable.
I think he is right now, honestly. I mean, we have to wait to see what Julio Jones stat. But do either of you guys think Julio Jones is going to play? I can't imagine.
Not a chance in hell. Not a chance.
No, right?
He won't practice. I can guarantee you that.
No way. Yeah,
Will
even if he was perfectly
Maybe.
healthy. Yeah. Eric, the Titans are really one of the more enigmatic teams in the league, though, when you think about it, right? Like they came in on Monday Night Football and knocked off the Bills. That's an impressive feat. Chiefs are still a stellar offense, but like I'm not convinced though that this game doesn't stay competitive. Even if it's a neutral game script, though, you're going to have AJ Brown playing alongside Chester Rogers and
Westbrook
Akina. So last year you at least had Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith and Brown still had a 26% target share. So what's his target share going to look like this week? We saw what happened when Jones went out. He just got peppered. So I don't know. I like him.
Right there with you. AJ Brown, 6,300. I will say I always have this kind of inkling suspicion that whenever you get these primetime games and somebody sticks out the way that AJ Brown did once Julio Jones went out of that game, you add another 5-10% to their ownership on the back end, because that's the public money or the public player kind of coming in and just being like, oh, well, Julio Jones is out, AJ Brown, easy click. He just played really well. He's cheap, all of those things. And you have a direct pivot. Just get up to Robert Woods for another $100 there. If you want to get different on this slate, playing Matthew Stafford with anybody else other than Cooper Kupp, which I don't necessarily recommend playing him alongside other people, but Robert Woods at 6,400 is just $100 more there. Then you start getting into this Tampa Bay offense as well. You start getting shares of Mike Evans up there at 6,500. There's so many great pivots. Jamar Chase against Baltimore, probably the other good game environment to be targeting here on this slate. Actually, only 27 total. That's kind of surprising to me there, but I absolutely think that AJ Brown is going to be a cash game staple, and he will definitely be in my cash game lineup in the event that Julio Jones is out. No way around it. It's the best game environment on this slate by quite a ways. So for sure that, but you do have pivots and phenomenal plays in the entire range. Chris Godwin under 6K. What are we doing here? What are we doing?
It's because it's every week. It's somebody different, but with Tampa Bay, it can be 3 of them in 1 week. So it doesn't really matter. I'm obviously with you on Chris Godwin.
Jesus. I mean, somebody has one bad game, we just start throwing them out to, I don't get it. Under 6K for the slot receiver for Tom Brady, get out of here.
Well, Matt, I'll give you another guy that 1 or 2 bad games and he's getting virtually no ownership. And I actually think this is one that throughout the week might hold. I'm probably going back to Terry McLaurin. It feels like a spot where they're going to be playing from behind. You have one of the preeminent cornerbacks in the league on IR for Green Bay. I'm willing to take some shots on McLaurin just because his ceiling is extraordinarily high. He might have a low floor in this offense, but that's one spot I will look to get to. He's now sub 7K on DraftKings. It is the cheapest he's been since week 4. So that's a spot I like. What do you like this week?
I like Terry McLaurin too. That secondary is pretty banged up. You have Darnell Savage with a concussion still too. He missed their last game, so maybe they're down to safety. You're just going to have to watch some of these things throughout the week. McLaurin, I mean, he's just going to see a monstrous target share. He has on the year, nearly a 29% target share. And of course, that's going to be a little bit less efficient with Heineke out there, but you're still just banking on pure volume for him. There's a couple other mid-price players I think we could look to for just like big target shares. Ridley, he's somebody I think we could maybe look to. That game environment is pretty bad, but it's still a 47.5 total. And outside of Kansas City, Tennessee, and Detroit, Los Angeles, we don't really have high totals. Like the third highest total is that Washington Green Bay game, speaking to your McLaurin point. But Ridley, as long as he's back with the team and there's no issues whatsoever, I mean, he has a very large target share too, going up against a Miami defense that has been banged up. We'll see on some of their injuries they have in the defensive backfield, but just another high target share player, very efficient player that's coming down in ownership because he hasn't had a big game recently.
I like that. Eric, anybody else here that might stand out to you?
How dare you? How dare you?
Dude, when I start doing multiple sports, it gets rough. You know, I start talking about captains as centers and, you know, or not captains, you know, catchers as centers. Fortunately, I didn't have to do any MLB content this year, but you get the point.
You know, I get it. Adam's an okay individual. I'm not going to say he's a nice guy, but whatever.
He's okay.
He's okay. He's all right. Jalen Waddle going up against Atlanta here. I'm really about this Atlanta Miami game. I think that's kind of been a sneaky spot for me. It's just kind of targeting Miami at all times. It worked obviously really well the week I was obsessed with Tom Brady and the entire Bucs passing game. I'm definitely not saying that Matt Ryan's that, but there definitely is going to be some passing volume and some offense going on that side of the field. And Devontae Parker, I mean, if he's still going to be banged up, if he's still not going to be playing here, he didn't play week 6 against the Jags over in London. I don't think he's probably going to play here again. Jalen Waddle, 13 targets, 10 catches, and he ended up going completely nuts in a game that I'm hoping most people didn't see. I bet he gets steamed as the week goes on a little bit here just because, you know, 5,600, actually probably not. He's under 6K, but it's not like he's some source of salary savings and, you know, low ADOT, but I don't really care. That's a ton of volume going to him on a PPR site like DraftKings. Happy to go to Jalen Waddle in a game environment. I think goes over that total for sure.
All right, Matt, I want to ask you one thing about Waddle because I actually listed him today as a talking point because I have some reservations on him, but I'm also intrigued by him. He's ninth in receptions this year, or sorry, ninth in targets. No, I was wrong the first time. Ninth in receptions and 54th in yards. And I only say that because in terms of what Jalen Waddle's doing in terms of volume, he's getting a ton of volume, but he has a 5.5 ADOT. Are they going to figure out how to get this guy more involved? More involved elsewhere outside of just on these short passes where he's getting 10 receptions for 55 yards. I know he scored twice last week and he's getting peppered, but like, where's that ceiling potential? Why can't they get him more involved downfield and elsewhere?
I think part of it is like Miami is a horrific offensive line. Like coming into the year, they were ranked like something like 31st by PFF, and they have not played well whatsoever. They've not gotten together. So you just don't have a lot of time for the signal callers. I think getting Tua back is a boost to the offense overall, and maybe you can see them throw the ball a little bit more downfield just with a more efficient quarterback in there. But even Tua hasn't played fantastic this year. So we'll see on him. The jury's still kind of out. But I mean, they are using Devontae Parker a little more downfield. They're using Gesicki downfield. So it's one of those things where I think we're still in a relatively small sample size, and Waddle's usage could fluctuate from week to week. So I'm still willing to take shots on him because of the target volume in that price range, hoping the ADOT comes up. But you're definitely right. It is a major concern right now.
Players with a lower ADOT than Jalen Waddle that have played more than 2 games, Rondell Moore. So, Eric, I think for this, it's a volume play though, right? Like
it's a volume play. I said on a PPR site like DraftKings, and
sure,
his ability to be target. I just don't know where else they're going. No Preston Williams probably this week too. Devontae Parker. Those are just 2 injuries to kind of keep your eye on there. I think it's just it's a high floor situation. If he's going to get targeted 13 times, I don't know who else is going to be targeting him there. And obviously seeing Tua in there immediately increase that volume like instantaneously. So 13 targets, 29 fantasy points there last week. I know the 2 touchdowns inflates that number a little bit, but in a game that I just expect Atlanta to be able to move the ball pretty easily on Miami as well. Again, I just really like 47.5. I like the over of that game, not to go into sports betting talk, but I absolutely love that number. And I think Jalen Waddle's a nice piece to put into those game stacks.
Okay. Is my mic still bad? Mike, we're good. Okay. I'm gonna go out today. I'm gonna get a whole new setup. I've had this mic and mixer for a long time now. It's treated me well, but it might be time. All right,
I will remember you. A little bit of that.
I'll have a ceremony for it. Tight ends. Before we do though, we always want to hook you guys up with good offers when new sports come back around, and we're doing an amazing one right now. If you use the promo code Curry, all caps, CURRY, like that basketball player that plays out in Golden State, half off the entire week of Awesemo Plus Platinum, not just NBA, everything on the site, boom, bust tool, lineup builder, ownership projections, player projections, top stacks, everything on the site for basketball, football, baseball, still happening, believe it or not. esports, NASCAR, PGA, MMA, all of it. All these tools built by the #1 ranked DFS player out there, Awesemo himself, and used by him to win, well, more than just a million or $2. So that speaks for itself right there. We've had some huge wins. I saw an Awesemo avatar up at the top of the NBA contest yesterday. Chopped that milli, took home 60K. You love to see that. Either, I don't know if it was a milli, it was a lot of money, but he took home 60K. Use the promo code Curry at awesemo.com/promos. I think you could do it there. If not, awesemo.com/join. Or Chris, if you want to, Mike, if you want to toss that link into chat, that would be good as well. And well, use the promo code Curry and get that half off Awesemo plus platinum. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm frozen. I look fine on my end, but who knows? Can you guys hear me in chat? If you can hear me, that's fine. It's not on my end, so whatever. Anyway, use it, Curry. And tight ends, Matt, who do you like most at tight end?
Tight end's a really interesting position this week. I think because we have both Waller and Travis Kelce. And I was taking an early look at our projections. We actually had Waller projected higher than Travis Kelce, and he's much cheaper and he's coming in lower owned. So I obviously Travis Kelce's in the phenomenal game environment. Tennessee secondary is brutal, and Travis Kelce creates a matchup nightmare overall. But just like going back on our projections, Waller has such a high target share and a high floor. And if the projections hold, which they'll change throughout the week, so monitor this, just seeing Waller with the higher projection overall and lower ownership makes me think I'm going to get a lot more of him in tournaments than Kelce at first glance.
What about you, Eric?
TJ Hawkinson, under 5% right now. He was unhealthy until he wasn't. 11 targets, 8 receptions last week. This game obviously is a massive mismatch. -15 that we're looking at a number of books. But if you're looking for a run back, you can do a lot worse than an under 5%, 5,100 TJ Hawkinson, who I think is always going to be the target hog of this team. You know, it was the running backs the first week. We've been trying to take shots, or people have been trying to take shots, not me, on some of these ancillary receiving options. But it's TJ Hawkinson who will be the target hog for Jared Goff. If they're going to move the ball whatsoever against the Rams, you got to be thinking he's going to be an important part of it.
If I'm going lower own, not real high own, I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert. No Zach Ertz in weeks 3 through 5 when Ertz really got integrated back into the offense. And mind you, Goedert was out in week 6, so I'm not counting that. Weeks 3 through 5. And Matt, I know you've talked about this a lot. Goddard and Ertz were running the same amount of routes. I think Goddard actually ran 3 fewer routes than Ertz over that span. He was out targeted by Ertz 21-12 over that stretch as well. Jalen Hurts has targeted his tight ends 45% of the time in the red zone this season. So if you're getting rid of Zach Ertz, who is now in Arizona, and you have Dallas Goedert, who was drafted to be their franchise tight end, I'm all about it. I mean, you have Jack Stahl behind them, and then Tyree Jackson, a converted quarterback who is the practice window's open, but he's not playing this week. No one else has taken a snap at tight end all season other than Jack Stahl. So if Goddard plays 90% of snaps this week and runs a route on 90% of dropbacks, I really wouldn't be shocked. Well, maybe not 90%, but I really wouldn't be shocked. So I think Dallas Goedert has a lot of upside in this spot. I don't know if people are really acknowledging how big of an influence Zach Ertz being gone has on Dallas Goedert.
I actually like that range a little more than normal weeks where you do have Goddard. You have Ricky Seals-Jones. He's about 1K cheaper. He's at 3,700. He's playing literally every single snap, functioning as basically a big wide receiver for that team. He's somebody I think you can run back in probably the 3rd best game environment overall on the slate. In Washington, project to be from behind. Ricky Seals-Jones just playing an immense role. And I also kind of like Mike Gesicki. Since the injuries to Devontae Parker and Will Fuller, Gesicki's not a tight end. He's playing slot receiver for this team. He's basically never lining up in line. He's a slot receiver for the Miami Dolphins. He's just 100 more than Dallas Goedert. So they're all kind of in the same ownership range, but their volume is a little bit better than tight ends that are typically hovering in this like mid 3K to mid 4K range. So I'm going to try to stack a lot of these guys in the game stacks we're talking about. We talked about liking that Miami Atlanta game. In the Washington game, I think Seals-Jones offers a very clear run back if you're doing things like playing Aaron Jones or stacking Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers. So it's a range I like a little more than normal.
I like Mike Gesicki a lot this week for sure. I also love talking about our top stacks tool. That's included if you use that promo code Curry. I know it's frozen, so in case you were distracted, Curry, Awesemo plus Platinum, the full week, half off every single sport we have, all of our tools. And if you want to get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, you can now do that weekly as well. If you just want to check out free content on the site, today we got NBA player projections, totally free, PGA rankings, and NHL player projections, everything free over there at awesemo.com. Eric, let's close it out with this. Top stack probability for the Rams. First week all year that the Chiefs have been on a main slate and don't have the highest top stack probability, by the way. Not 29% for the Rams, 19% for Kansas City. And then you've got like Green Bay at 8, Tampa at 7, Arizona at 7. At highest owned quarterbacks this week will be Lamar. It looks like Matthew Stafford, Mahomes, but they're not crazy ownership. Who is your favorite stack and who is your favorite leverage stack for week 7? And then you, Matt.
Yeah, so I mean, you're getting so much leverage by going to the Rams in Kansas City right now. I mean, that's 50% of the entire top stacks that are basically encompassed by 2 teams and 2 quarterbacks and 2 stacks. That's unbelievable. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. So pretty much anywhere else that you're going to be going to on the board is going to be slightly leveraged towards the positive or just negatively leveraged. And so you're really kind of taking a stance one way or another. I don't know how you don't continue to be playing Tom Brady, though, in this entire Bucs offense, passing at a ridiculous clip. You can stack them up a number of different ways for tournaments. Chris Godwin's going to be popular underneath 6K, but finding exposure to Mike Evans, if it ends up being like an OJ Howard, Cameron Brady, if you want to take super low shots on the tight end spot there with Gronk still out, I think being able to combine it with Antonio Brown obviously makes a lot of sense. So many ways to be stacking up Tom Brady. It's pretty flat to be going towards him right now. It's like a negative 0.3% leverage, which is negligible. But if I'm going to have an offense that can keep pace with the Rams and the Chiefs and kind of outscore them, hard not to like Tom Brady.
No doubt. And if you guys are in the NBA, the strategy show is on every day at 10 a.m. The deeper dive, 2 hours before lock, live before lock, 1 hour before lock, take you all the way up, talk all injuries, everything. So hang out with us for NBA. But I know we got almost 300 people watching right now. We're 19 likes away from 100. The people that are watching NFL shows during NBA season on opening night on a Wednesday, we know you're here for the right reason. So 19 likes, I think we could do it. Let's get to 100 before we close this out. And Matt, what are you doing at the top stacks here with the tool? What are you seeing?
Well, I'm seeing that there's only 5 teams with a positive leverage score on the main slate, and 4 of them are Matthew Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Kyler Murray. So does that mean I have to talk about the 5th and Zach Wilson?
You can do whatever you want, or you could talk about the fact that a 29.3% top stack probability on a 10-game slate is absurd.
Yeah, I was just kidding. I'm not playing Zach Wilson, but that just also speaks to Eric's point about how ridiculous the Rams top stack tool is. And I mean, even if Kansas City was just sitting at 9.5% leverage score, that would be ridiculous by itself. And the Rams, they double that. So when we're talking about under-owned stacks, it's really hard. They're all basically going to come with negative leverage scores. That doesn't mean one can't win. I would be trying to look for like as little negative score as possible, but Tannehill does offer that against Kansas City. He's only 3.1% owned based on our projections right now. And that's a spot where they're just going to be playing from behind against Kansas City. Presumably the secondary doesn't scare you there. And he's very clear stacking option in AJ Brown. I think you can even correlate if you want to double stack with some of the lesser positions. Like I'd probably try to get a Ferkser in there, maybe as a pass catching tight end. That's one I really like. And then I was kind of surprised to see Lamar Jackson being as owned as he would be after last week's complete dud. I think maybe that's because his price is still a little bit lower there. But Baltimore has surprisingly had the 5th highest pass rate in neutral game scripts this year, which is not something we've seen. That line is only 6 points. So if it does stay somewhat close, which bookmakers are projecting it within a touchdown, that could be a spot to maybe buy low. Right now, the ownership is still pretty high on Lamar, though, when it comes down to it.
I like it, man. I'll leave us with this. I might get a little cute with the Rams and go Darrell Henderson, Cooper Kupp, no Matthew Stafford in some of these lineups. It worked for me the other day with Alexander Madison and Jefferson. It would have worked for you with like an AJ Brown and a Derrick Henry. I don't think it's crazy that Henderson scores 2 touchdowns and Cooper Kupp has 2 scores as well, and they rack up points, but they can do it both in the ground, in the air, without Matthew Stafford being in the optimal, or We just saw a guy win the slant with Matthew Stafford and with Darrell Henderson and Cooper Kupp. I think, Eric, what I'm saying here is if these stacks are going to be super chalky, but also have insane top stack probability, you're already getting leverage by just being over the field. Like, they're not bad just because they're chalky, but maybe there's some ways to differentiate here with the Rams where you just have so many ways that they can score points.
I agree with that. I think you could probably do the same thing with Robert Woods, Darrell Henderson. I mean,
sure,
there's definitely some opportunities. So when it comes down to the stack, when you're combining the quarterback, I mean, you're definitely looking for a QB1 performance. That's kind of what you're hoping for. But if you're not, you're going down to the cheap end and you're hoping that the ceiling you get from the other skill position players is somewhat close to the top end. So being able to afford a Derrick Henry or a Devontae Adams in those kind of lineups, it's going to be very next to impossible to play Kupp, Henderson, Matthew Stafford with the way the salaries work out, and then combine a high ceiling option. But if you go down to a bottom end with a cheapy quarterback and kind of combine it and encapsulate those touchdowns, if you get 4 touchdowns between Henderson and Kupp or Henderson and Woods, yes, getting that punt down there allows for you to have access to another monster ceiling. So I think there's definitely ways that it can work out for you. And I'm definitely shifting more towards having 2 players from some of these top tier offenses. Probably not where, they're going to be 2 pass catchers. I do like the running back with the wide receiver a lot more. So it won't be like a Hill and Kelsey without Mahomes thing. But I think that there's definitely some viability to what you're saying.
Yeah. And Matt, you know what? There's always going to be Deshaun Jackson or Van Jefferson as well. You never know.
I mean, you can play some of those guys. I would prefer Van Jefferson based on the more concrete role. But I mean, we've seen him have a big game this year too. And if you want to get really, really weird, say you're running like 100 Matthew Stafford stacks, you should probably include some Deshaun Jackson in there.
Yeah. It's not the craziest idea. All we're saying is with 30% top stack probability, there's ways to get a lot of those stacks and still, change them up a little bit. And I'm all about it. I like the idea of it. Anyway, that'll do it for us. Follow your boy Eric at Eric Lindquist on Twitter. I promise you, he is far more conservative and tame on Twitter than he is on these live streams.
Oh my God.
And Matt at Matt_Gajeski. Thanks to Mike Barnes for producing. Nice job, man. We got through that little hiccup there. I don't know what happened, but it's all good. And we have reached the end of the road. So follow me at Lafayette_D, Awesemo at Awesemo_com. And we'll catch you back here for the next one. Check out Prize Picks. Use the promo code Awesemo and use that promo code Curry to get half off Awesemo Plus weekly right now with the NBA underway. Peace.